Hello everyone and welcome to Auntie Scrouge Space Program. I'm Karabel Kitsune and I'll be your host for this series of 4 solid rocket booster based launchers. We'll start from a small launcher that should be possible to build pretty early into a career run. The reason why I picked SRBs is the price along the thrust these engines offer. I heard people saying that they are not that useful, but hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate that is not the case. For this build we are going to need one hammer SRB, one thumper SRB, one size 12 decoupler, 6 basic fins, and finally one stabilizer. The launcher itself costs only 2000 credits. I included a sample 1.2 ton payload along with a decoupler and fairing. This launcher should work just fine with pretty much any payload between 900 and 1200 kilograms plus the weight of the payload decoupler and fairing. This particular configuration is very useful for satellite missions. Mission rewards for satellites orbiting Caribbean, Moon or Minmus are pretty high. This build can achieve that with minimal cost. The SRB placement is fairly simple, but note that the hammer is reduced to only 17% thrust. The fins in 2 configurations of 3 ensure stability during flight. I'll explain the importance of the reduced thrust and fin placement later on. And finally, note how the whole rocket is already pitched at 5-degree angle. You'll see this with later builds as well. This will allow the rocket to start the gravity turn immediately. But enough theory crafting, let's see it in action. First, let's wait for the physics to settle down a bit. With just one stabilizer, this takes a while. Okay, let's fire up this firecracker and see what happens. The first stage will provide the initial boost in vertical velocity we need to make sure we don't fall back down. In the Carabel Engineer HUD you can see how the fins help keep the heading and orientation stable, while pitch is gradually getting lower. This particular fin triple symmetry configuration is perfectly sufficient for a self-stabilizing rocket. That is, as long as one fin in a configuration is in the bottom and the other 2 on the top. Should you try to place them otherwise, the rocket would gradually rotate to achieve stable position. Not only we save a bit of money by using less fins, but during flight the air pushing against the top fins will minimize any changes to roll axis. Just make sure that when building a rocket or a space plane, you keep the center of lift behind the center of mass and the fins or wings used are big enough to keep the craft stable. The second stage is here mostly to provide lateral thrust. It starts slow so that the gravity turn can do its job. The rate of the gravity turn greatly depends on how far the center of lift is from center of mass. The closer the 2 are together, the slower the rocket will turn over. So as you build your own version or just change the payload, be sure to adjust the fin position a bit to make sure the rocket doesn't turn over too slowly or too quickly. Then adjust the second stage thrust to fine-tune the result. Hold on. Oh, sorry, I have to beat this up. Hi Jeb, what's going on? What? What do you mean you hate my rocket? Seriously? Just because there's no room for rapid unscheduled disassembly? Look, chap, I know you want to try something crazy, but I'm not sending anyone on suicide missions. There's so much more in life than explosions. But don't worry, I talked to Gene and we have a nice and big spaceship in mind for you to pilot. Don't worry, you'll be the first one to know when it's ready. Cool, see you later then. Sometimes I really don't get it, Kerbal. But don't worry, ripping off our clients I wanted to say, by saving money on missions like these, we can later afford something special for larger interplanetary mission. That's still quite a way off though. Now, where were we? Ah yes, in high atmospheric flight. Don't worry about the fins heating up a bit, the cardboard they are made of should last long enough. As you can see, this type of launcher requires some patience. On the other hand, you can use this time to get a drink or something. I guess I should warn you that some patience will be required when using all of the 4 SRB-based launchers I plan to cover. But once you fire up the second stage, it needs no supervision whatsoever until you leave the atmosphere. Or you can just use the physics warps. It should be fairly safe given the rocket's simplicity. Upon leaving the atmosphere, it's of course time to get rid of the fairing and release the payload. While the battery attached to the top still has plenty of juice, the first thing I usually do is solar panel extension, just in case I forget about it. Personally, I prefer when in orbit, so the next step is to raise the apogee accordingly. Now let's create a circularization maneuver. I prefer to use the precise maneuver by Redis Morse to set up my nodes. Besides the editor functionality, it also allows to copy in maneuver data from the transfer window planner mod, for example. Just in case you're not familiar with Kerbal Alarm Clock, I use it for setting up notifications so that I don't have to worry about overshooting my maneuver nodes or other important moments. But let's just skip through the time warp to the actual burn start. The satellite still has over 3,200 meters per second of delta V left. With the antennas it has, we'll lose control outside of the Kerbal system, but I'm sure that with some tweaks you can get pretty far. And this brings us to the end of this episode in a series about launchers that use only solid rocket boosters for payload delivery to near orbit. Before anyone asks, these builds are so cheap that there is no point in introducing any kind of reusability. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.